They'll laugh with a stranger. They'll open up in small talk. They'll seem relaxed, almost free, with someone they've just met. But with you, the one who cares, the one who shows up, the one who loves them, they freeze. They withdraw. They seem distant, guarded, closed off, and you're left wondering, how could they feel safer with someone they barely know than with the person who has proven again and again that they're here to stay? This is not about you. It's not about your worth, your love, or your effort. It's about what safety means to an avoidant heart. The illusion of safety and distance. The avoidant walks through life with two parallel worlds. One world is the one they show to strangers. It is light, easy, charming. It requires no depth, no risk, no roots. The other world is the one they guard. It is heavy, protected, buried under years of silence and survival. And this second world, the real one, rarely comes out. With strangers, they live only in the first world. This is why they can appear effortless in casual spaces. They can chat with a neighbor about the weather, smile at the barista who remembers their order, offer witty banter at a work party. People walk away thinking, they're so open, they're so easy to talk to. But you, the one who loves them, know the other side. You know the silence that lingers at home, the way conversations collapse into half sentences, the way they dodge intimacy like it burns. And it makes no sense, because why would someone be more talkative with a stranger than with the person who loves them most? Here's why. Strangers ask for nothing that costs them. When they open up to a stranger, they risk nothing. If the stranger rejects them, the wound doesn't cut deep. If the stranger misunderstands them, it doesn't rewrite their sense of self. If the stranger leaves, there's nothing lost. But you are not a stranger. You are a mirror. Every look, every word, every silence carries weight. What you think of them matters. How you respond matters. Whether you stay or walk away, it matters. And matching feels dangerous. So the avoidant chooses safety in the very place you wouldn't expect. Not in the arms of the one who loves them, but in the empty space where no one is close enough to touch them. It's why they can spend hours scrolling on their phone, but freeze when you ask, how are you really doing? It's why they can tell a stranger about a childhood story, but turn cold when you ask about their past. Because strangers don't demand follow-up questions. Strangers don't say, tell me more. Strangers don't sit in silence, waiting for the next layer. You do, and that's what terrifies them. For the avoidant, distance feels like control, and control feels like safety. So they learn to ration closeness, to measure connection like drops of water in a desert, enough to keep the bond alive, but never so much that they feel consumed. And here's the paradox. This doesn't mean they don't care. It doesn't mean they don't feel. In fact, sometimes the depth of what they feel is exactly why they run. Because strangers can't hurt them, but you can. And that makes you both. Their deepest longing and their greatest fear, the weight of being known. Closeness is not measured in time. It is measured in weight. And for the avoidant, being truly known feels heavier than carrying stone. To a stranger, they can share a piece of themselves, a funny anecdote, a small frustration, a safe opinion. That piece floats away, untethered, with no strings attached. But with you, sharing is not floating. Sharing is planting. Every word they give you sinks into the soil of your relationship. It grows roots. It demands water. It changes the shape of what exists between you. And that is what terrifies them. Because if they let you know too much, you gain power. Not the kind of power used for control, but the power of intimacy. The power to see them, to read them, to reach into the places they've hidden from the world. And when you can reach them, you can also wound them. So they ration their words. They ration their feelings. They ration the truths they desperately want to share. But fear will one day be used against them. This is why the avoidant often feels safer with someone who knows nothing than with the person who knows everything. It isn't that they love the stranger more. It's that the stranger has no keys to their locked doors. But you hold the whole ring. And that weight, the weight of being fully known, is a weight they don't yet trust themselves to carry. So silence becomes their shield. Deflection becomes their language. Distance becomes their solution. It's not that they don't hear you when you say, "Talk to me." It's that the very act of talking feels like peeling away skin, like exposure, like danger. But here's the irony. The more they withhold, the heavier the silence becomes. And the very closeness they fear is what they secretly crave. Because beneath their guarded heart, they want the relief of not holding it all alone. They want to be known and still loved. They want to be seen and still chosen. But one is not enough to overcome fear. So they live in the push and pull, longing for your presence, resisting your reach, desiring connection, but fearing the cost. And every moment they withdraw, every silence they choose, every wall they build, it is not just against you. It is against the unbearable weight of being fully seen. When closeness feels like a trap, love, for most people, love feels like home, like arriving, like being allowed to exhale. But for the avoidant, love often feels like the walls are closing in. The more someone leans in, the more suffocated they feel. This isn't because they don't care. It isn't because they don't want closeness. It's because their nervous system has been trained to associate closeness with danger. When you move closer, their body doesn't read safety. It reads risk. It reads loss of self. It reads the possibility of disappointment. So instead of leaning back into your arms, they lean back into themselves. Instead of unfolding, they retreat. Instead of softening, they tighten. This is why so many people, in love with an avoidant, say the same heartbreaking words. The more I give, the more they pull away. Because to the avoidant, your giving isn't just kindness. It is weight. It is expectation. It is the slow pressure of intimacy, pressing against their chest. And when the pressure builds, their mind begins to whisper, "What if I lose myself? What if I can't give this much back? What if I fail them? What if they leave me once they know the real me?" That whisper grows louder until it becomes a roar. And in that roar, silence feels safer than speech. Distance feels safer than closeness. Withdrawal feels safer than presence. So they hide, sometimes in work, sometimes in friends, sometimes in hobbies, sometimes in nothing at all. Just a quiet retreat into their own head. Anything that gives them space. Anything that gives them the illusion of control. And yet, inside that retreat, something stirs. Because even as they pull away, they ache for what they've lost. They replay your words. They remember your touch. They think about the way you make them laugh, the way you see them, the way you wait. It is not that they don't love. It is that love feels like a trap, and traps are meant to be escaped. This paradox drives them into cycles. Cycles of pursuit and retreat. Cycles of desire and denial. Cycles where they come close enough to taste love, then far enough to feel free. But the truth is, neither closeness nor distance gives them peace, because peace is not found in running away, and it is not found in keeping someone at arm's length. Peace comes when love is no longer a trap, but a choice. The problem is, most avoidants don't yet know how to feel safe in that choice. And so they live with an invisible rule. Don't get too close. Don't let anyone in too far. But here's what they don't see. By avoiding the trap, they build another. A trap of loneliness. A trap of emptiness. A trap where silence becomes their prison and freedom becomes a cage with no one else inside. Because yes, distance feels like relief at first, but relief is not the same as joy. And relief is not the same as love. Joy only comes when love can flow freely, when closeness no longer threatens their identity, but strengthens it, when intimacy doesn't suffocate, but breathes life. And this is why avoidants so often find themselves torn in two. They want the safety of distance and the beauty of closeness, but can't yet imagine how to hold both. So they default to silence. They default to retreat. They default to what has always protected them. But inside, they long for someone who doesn't just want their surface, someone who can sit in the quiet without demanding more, someone who can show them that closeness is not a cage, but a doorway. Because here is the secret. The avoidant does not truly fear you. They fear what you represent. They fear the vulnerability inside themselves. They fear being seen, being needed, being known. But deep down, they crave it. They crave the kind of love that allows them to finally exhale. They crave the kind of intimacy that doesn't demand they lose themselves, but allows them to find themselves. And every time they run, they hope, quietly, secretly, that love will still be waiting. When they're ready to return, they hope you'll understand that their silence was not absence. It was fear. That their distance was not rejection. It was protection. That their retreat was not indifference. It was survival. But survival is not the same as living. And the avoidant knows this, even if they never say it out loud. So they hover at the edge of closeness, not stepping in, not walking away, living in the in-between. But here's the truth that shifts everything. They cannot be loved into safety. They must choose it. They must face the fear of the trap and realize it was never love that caged them. It was their own walls. And until they see this, silence will feel safer than speech. Distance will feel safer than intimacy. Withdrawal will feel safer than presence. But the day they finally see, the day they realize love is not a trap, but a freedom they've never known, is the day everything changes. Because once the avoidant discovers that true closeness is not suffocation, but salvation, they no longer run from it. They learn to rest in it. And that is when silence breaks. That is when distance closes. That is when love finally feels like home. The hidden cost of their silence. Silence feels safe, at least to the avoidant. It is the shield they've learned to carry. It is the wall that cannot be broken. It is the pause that keeps them from saying too much or revealing too deeply. But silence always carries a cost, because silence doesn't just protect. It also hides. It distances. It erodes. The avoidant believes their silence spares them pain, but in truth, it often creates the very pain they were trying to avoid. Think of it this way. When someone you love falls silent, you don't feel safe. You feel abandoned. You don't feel reassured. You feel uncertain. You don't feel loved. You feel shut out. And this is the cruel paradox. The avoidant silence, intended to create safety, actually creates disconnection. It pushes away the very love they long to hold. But they don't always see this. To them, silence feels noble. It feels restrained. It feels like choosing calm over chaos. They don't realize that silence can be just as loud as anger. That silence can bruise as deeply as words. That silence can leave scars just as real as shouting. And so, in their effort to protect themselves, they end up hurting the people they care about most. Not out of cruelty, not out of malice, but out of habit, out of fear, out of the deep belief that words will only make things worse. And here's the tragedy. While silence protects them, it isolates them too, because every unspoken truth is a weight they carry alone. Every unshared fear is a secret locked inside. Every withheld apology is a bridge left unbuilt. And over time, the avoidant begins to feel the very loneliness they tried to avoid. They look around and see distance where there should be closeness. They see tension where there should be ease. They see suspicion where there should be trust. And often, they cannot trace it back to themselves. They cannot see that silence was not a solution, but the slow erosion of intimacy. This is why relationships with avoidance so often feel like walking through fog. You sense something is wrong, but you can't name it. You feel something missing, but you can't reach it. You want to connect, but every attempt slides off the surface of their silence. And still, the avoidant tells themselves, this is safer, this is better, this is how I keep control. But control is not the same as love, and silence is not the same as peace. Love breathes, love speaks, love risks, love opens. Silence, by contrast, freezes, it suffocates, it walls off. And yet, silence isn't the whole truth of the avoidant, because behind that silence lives 1,000 unsaid words, unspoken I love yous, unvoiced I'm sorries, unexpressed I need yous. They feel it all, but the risk of saying it out loud feels unbearable, so they store it, hide it, carry it in their chest, like a stone that grows heavier with every passing day. And one day, they look back and realize that the silence they thought was protecting them has stolen years of connection, moments of joy, chances to heal. They realize too late that words withheld can wound just as deeply as words spoken in anger, because love cannot live where silence dominates. Love cannot thrive where truth is buried. Love cannot grow in shadows. And this is the hidden cost of the avoidance silence. It doesn't just keep them safe, it keeps them alone. But here's the truth that could change everything. When silence breaks, so does the illusion of safety. And in that breaking, something beautiful can emerge. Because vulnerability is not the same as danger. It is not the same as chaos. It is not the same as loss. Vulnerability is the soil in which intimacy grows. It is the bridge across which love can finally walk. It is the doorway through which the avoidant can finally let themselves be known. But the first step is recognizing the cost, seeing silence not as protection, but as prison, understanding that while silence feels safe, it steals the very life they most long to live. Because at the end of it all, what the avoidant truly wants is not distance. It is connection, not silence, but understanding, not control, but freedom. And freedom only comes when they find the courage to let their voice rise, to let their truth be heard, to let their walls finally lower. That's when love stops feeling like danger. That's when closeness stops feeling like a trap. That's when intimacy finally feels like home. The possibility of change. For the avoidant, patterns run deep. Silence feels safer than words. Distance feels safer than closeness. Strangers feel safer than love. It's the script they've rehearsed since childhood, a survival pattern, not a preference, but patterns, no matter how old, can shift. They can be unlearned. They can be softened. They can be healed. Because here's the truth. Avoidants are not broken. They are not incapable of love. They are not destined to remain locked behind walls forever. They are simply human beings who learned early on That love was complicated. That closeness came with danger. That emotions could overwhelm, reject, or abandon. So they built a fortress. They told themselves stories. They chose control over surrender. They chose silence over vulnerability. They chose strangers over intimacy. But even as they make these choices, something inside them whispers. It whispers when they sit alone at night. It whispers when they scroll through messages and feel the ache of someone they miss. It whispers when they laugh with friends, but feel an emptiness that friendship alone cannot fill. The whisper says, "You were made for more, for connection, for closeness, for love." And here's the turning point. When an avoidant finally grows tired of living in half-light, they begin to listen to that whisper. It doesn't happen all at once. There is no overnight transformation. Healing comes slowly, like dawn rising. First a glow, then a shimmer, then light flooding in. The first step is awareness, noticing the patterns, seeing how silence is not neutral, but costly, how distance is not safe, but isolating, how strangers are not easier, but emptier. Awareness cracks the wall. It lets light through. It shifts the question from, "How do I keep myself safe?" to, "What am I losing by staying safe?" Because staying safe has meant staying lonely. It has meant living on the surface. It has meant never fully being seen. And in that realization, change begins. The avoidant experiments. They share a thought they would have swallowed. They sit in a silence they would have run from. They admit to fear, instead of hiding behind anger. These moments feel terrifying, like standing on the edge of a cliff, like stepping into fire, like handing someone else the keys to your heart. But slowly, the avoidant learns something new. They learn that vulnerability does not always lead to rejection. They learn that truth spoken can bring relief, not chaos. They learn that love given can be returned, not withdrawn. And in those small lessons, their nervous system rewires. Their body learns safety, not in walls, but in trust. This is the possibility of change, not perfection, not flipping into constant openness, but learning balance, learning that closeness doesn't have to suffocate, that space doesn't have to mean abandonment, that love can hold both freedom and intimacy, because ultimately, this isn't about choosing strangers over lovers, silence over speech, walls over bridges. It's about learning that real safety is not found in hiding. It's found in connection. Real safety is not found in control. It's found in trust. Real safety is not found in solitude. It's found in love. And when the avoidant reaches this place, everything changes. They stop running. They stop hiding. They stop settling for strangers because closeness feels unbearable. Instead, they begin to risk. They begin to open. They begin to let someone see what they've always kept hidden. And for the first time, love feels less like danger and more like home for the one loving the avoidant. This is not always easy. It requires patience, boundaries, clarity, self-respect, because you cannot force change. You cannot drag someone out of their fortress. You cannot demand words from someone still terrified of speaking, but you can stand strong. You can refuse to lose yourself chasing. You can love without erasing your worth. You can hold space without accepting neglect. And sometimes, that very strength is what helps the avoidant see that love doesn't have to be dangerous. That closeness doesn't have to mean loss. That intimacy doesn't have to mean drowning. Because love, at its truest, is not suffocating. It is liberating, not controlling, but freeing. Not a trap, but a refuge. And that is the possibility of change that the avoidant who once felt safer with strangers than with you, can learn to feel safe in your arms, not because you convinced them, or chased them, or lost yourself for them, but because they finally discovered what they had been missing all along. And that discovery, when it happens, changes everything. So if you've ever felt that an avoidant silence was about you, know this: it was never about your worth. It was always about their fear. And if you've ever felt that their distance meant you weren't enough, know this: it was never about your value. It was about their walls. Because the truth is, you are not too much. You are not too needy. You are not too demanding. You are simply asking for what love requires: openness, trust, connection. And if the avoidant one day chooses to grow, to heal, to risk, they may finally learn that those things were never dangerous. They were the very things they needed most. And when they do, strangers will no longer feel safer, because they will have finally learned that safety isn't out there. It's right here, in love that stays.